Hello, everyone. Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Megan is a story magician and intuitive writing coach, and she is the creator of this beautiful oracle deck, which we actually created together. And so today on this call, I wanted to ask Megan some questions about her work and also the process of creating this beautiful deck. And I would say, let's dive right in. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining me today, Megan.
Oh, thank you for joining me and for making this possible, Anna. It's such a dream come true.
So, the first question I have for you is, how did you get started on your journey as a writer? And also, what inspired you to turn this into a business and a career? What inspired you to become a writing coach and support others on this journey?
Yeah. I would say I've always been a writer, but my writing journey really started when I was in college and I was struggling to write papers. I studied philosophy and I didn't have a writing process. And so even just wrangling with these thoughts, reading these books and trying to figure out what I could write about them was hard enough. And then I was writing myself in circles. And I pretty much had an identity crisis because I'd always been a writer and suddenly I couldn't write. And I thought, well, if I can't write, who am I? And I got help. Fortunately, there were these wonderful writing assistants at my school. And they were, asking me, okay, so do you do an outline? And they started asking me questions that made me realize I had always been fortunate enough to just sit and write in my inspired flow. And I had never created a process that worked for me. And now I needed one. So I started creating that process. And my journey to becoming a writing coach was basically, I wanted to provide for other people what I wish I'd had. So I started creating these resources that were different ways to outline and brainstorm and different ways to revise and how do you gather your thoughts and really this deep dive into knowing yourself as a writer. And I thought everybody should have this option. Everybody should be able to learn what their process is because it was so painful to me not to have had that. And I began with students. That was where the call came first. And I'd also been somebody at school who never asked questions because I'm such a connector and such an empath that I felt whether or not it existed, I felt like the possible disapproval of adults if I asked a question I should know the answer to or asked the wrong question. Like I didn't want to jeopardize that connection. And so I was very drawn to helping young people and helping students find a way to express themselves and find a way to get words on the paper that didn't feel overwhelming and actually even lit them up. And then I was hooked. When I started writing coaching back in 2006, I went, okay, this is my calling. This is what I'm meant to do. And it's evolved over the years. I now serve business owners, helping them write marketing content and write the books that are in their hearts and speak to their soul audience so they can do more of their powerful work. But I still really am in that space of I'm giving people what I wished I'd had. And I think writing is everybody's birthright and everybody deserves to have a process that works for them to get the thoughts from their heart onto paper.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I would really love to know how your writing journey has evolved since then, or your work as a coach specifically, because you do call yourself an intuitive writing coach these days. And so how would you compare the process that you teach and share with your clients compared to when you got started with the students to what you're doing now? And where does the intuitive piece really come in?
Yeah, I would say my journey as a writer is always in parallel to my clients and I'm learning from them. And so often what happens is I offer them an invitation or give them permission, not in the sense that I am a gatekeeper, but in a sense that we all sometimes need to hear externally what we know already internally, right? So I'll often find myself giving a client that nudge, that permission, like, well, what if you wrote what you really want to write? And then I'll listen to myself say that and go, what if I give myself that permission? What if I followed that? So my writing journey follows what I'm providing for my clients. And then I would say my writing coaching evolving into becoming intuitive is really parallel to my spiritual journey. So as I just began to open up more and more to not knowing, to asking questions, to going, I wonder, to feeling awe and amazement about just being a human being alive in this world. And then doing some, more specific, I was introduced to Kundalini yoga, and began working with a spiritual mentor, and learning about my own birth chart in astrology and seeing some connections there and seeing, oh, these places where I thought it was broken are really places where my soul has this beautiful, unique purpose and journey. And the more I follow that, the more open and expansive I feel. So that was happening for me in my personal life. And then I was bringing to my clients this opportunity to write in a way that really felt it reflected the wisdom they're receiving from whatever their personal practices are. I don't teach people spiritual practices. I do in my work, take them through meditations or visualizations and invite them to connect with a deeper knower. I call it the wise writer within, but that part of you that knows, that goes, I want to say this is my message. And just posing the question, what if you allowed that to come through? So that's been the growth of the intuitive part of my writing coaching process, and also giving people space to really listen to what their intuitive process is that they may already know. So the intuitive part comes in with what they want to write, coming from their heart or from their guides. I do have a lot of clients who channel, who get these deep downloads. But the intuitive piece is also, what your process is, and trust that. And there isn't one right way to write. So I would say that since I began with students, nearly 17 years ago, I've always been inviting them to do what's true for them, but I didn't know to call that intuition, because at the time it was just, obviously, this is the way to write because it's your way to write. It seemed like, well, why would you do it any different? Why would you force yourself to do it a different way? But I wasn't really immersed in that context. At the time, the reason I wanted to give students this tool to learn how their brains worked was very mechanical. I was learning about learning disabilities and how our brains are wired differently. And I was really in this context, I was a very materialistic kind of thinker. It's all about the neurons and the firing. And obviously that's part of it. But I just didn't have the language then to know that what I was really doing was helping writers listen to their own wise writer within. But it's been such a gift to, I don't know, be very open about the fact that I think writing is magic. I think we're getting these messages from realms that are beyond our comprehension. I think that we have this gift when we get to put them into physical form, either words written on the page or even the physicality of your voice vibrating. I think it's all magic. And it's just been my evolution to allow myself to acknowledge that magic, to speak openly about it. That's really changed, I would say. The core of the work I've been doing has always been listen to that intuitive sense. And now I know what to call it.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I really resonate with what you said about writing opening us to realms beyond the physical potentially, because that's very much been my journey as well. I remember when I was a teenager, maybe 16 or 17, I started journaling more regularly, and I had a lot of questions about life, and I felt as though when I was journaling, all of a sudden those answers just started coming, and it was from that higher place. And that's when I really started opening to my spiritual wisdom, or my higher self, or whatever you want to call it. But I just got these answers that I just felt were like a deep knowing that I just had in my soul. And I just knew that I was true, but it came out of seemingly nowhere, just by asking the questions and allowing the answers to come through. And I also love what you said about, really being connected to our own truth, and opening to that part of ourselves. One thing I've often seen is I really feel blocked on my journey, or my writing journey, when I get into my head too much. And there have been times when I was maybe going through a lot in my life, or just overthinking things, or not wanting to feel what was happening because I was working through some pretty heavy trauma. And I noticed that whenever I gave myself permission to reconnect with my heart and what I was really feeling, then things just started to flow. And that's true every single time. Then everything just becomes a lot more simple, and the answers are just there, and the words are just there. Like it just
That's
flows.
so beautiful. Yeah. And thinking can be so powerful when we do want to solve a problem, when there's something that requires our analytical, motion. And what's so powerful about letting go and writing is that it slows you down, and suddenly you're moving at the pace that your writing can go, or your typing can go, or even a lot of people write and create by speaking. So, but even so, you're slowing down to one word at a time. And what that does is give the mind a break from needing to be in control, needing to know where it's going and how it's going to end, and allowing, as you're saying, this higher wisdom a chance to get a word in edgewise. And so for me, the physical act of writing, whether it's in a journal or on my keyboard, or even I do a lot of walking and talking, just moving my body and talking out loud to myself and asking myself questions. You move from, I've got to know it all, I've got to think my way to the answer, to what's that one next piece of wisdom that's coming through. And that's where the magic happens, the whatever your sense of cosmology is, like the wisdom that can see more for us than we can see for ourselves, and the wisdom that can wish bigger for us than we can wish for ourselves, gets a chance to come through and say, what about this? And yeah, that's the power that I imagine that's the power of all creating, but writing happens to be the place where I create the most. I, unlike you, I don't have those draws to do the visual arts, or, there are so many different modes of creating where we can open that channel to that divine wisdom. Writing happens to be the one that I was called to.
It's a big one for me too, for sure. I mean, I was a writer long before I started designing things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it has this power too, because it's still using words. And so we think of solving problems, and, when we're overthinking, it's in words. And then we're writing, we're still using words, and we're saying to the brain, it's okay. I'm still on this. I'm still pursuing an answer here, but we really have switched modalities and opened too. So it's like a real, for anybody who gets stuck in overthinking, I would highly recommend journaling as a easy, gentle way to redirect the mind.
I totally agree with that. I feel that's helped me so much on my journey, just allowing myself to write freely and not for anybody else. Just, I think if you just write for yourself, that's so powerful, because you get to release yourself from all the expectations. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to find all the perfect words, but usually when you do that, then that's what happens. Like it's just so easy to write beautiful things, and it's just so natural. So now I'd really love to hear a little bit more about your journey with this deck that we created together. When did you first have the idea or the inspiration to create this deck, and how did you get started on this journey, like even before we started our work together?
Yeah. So it was in 2020, and it was just like a fully formed, this is what I'm doing kind of idea. I had some experience with Oracle decks. I have some that I absolutely love. I would consider myself a newbie in terms of Oracle decks. But they've always been this wonderful guidance for me, and a feeling like I'm remembering something. Like you mentioned this, like, yeah, you hear it and you deeply know it and go, it's kind of like a remembering. So in 2020, it just was like this absolutely clear, I want to create an Oracle deck, just like a fully formed, I'm doing this. In terms of what went into it, as you know, there are 3 different types of cards. There are powerful statement cards, there are prayers, and then there are these archetypes that relate to writing and creativity. Now, I've always in my writing coaching practice used powerful statements with clients that are based on reframing identities that they're coming up against that are no longer serving them, or beliefs they're coming up against that are no longer serving them. So for example, this is one I really relate to, and I've heard it a lot from clients, is like, oh, I always procrastinate, like, oh, I just wait till the last minute to do things. And there's a judgment in it, right? If I were a more responsible person, if I were a better person, I wouldn't procrastinate. The reframe I offer is, it may be that you're procrastinating, but what if it were true that you intuitively know that your process is to think about it for a long time, like the majority of your time working on it is in this thinking and putting it together here. And it's only right at the end that you actually need to put the pen to paper to funnel everything you've already been working on, processing, creating into, and they go, that feels right. That feels true. And that feels empowering. So instead of, I'm a procrastinator, it's, oh, I trust my process, and my process happens to be this. So those kind of reframes are a big part of the work I do. And then coming up with the powerful statement, and then seeing people feel lit up like that. So I had a collection already of some powerful statements that I've used over the years with clients. And I went, okay, I know these are definitely going into the deck. At this same time in my life, in 2020, I worked with a womb alchemist who helped me tap very deeply into my womb space, and do some healing, and it was really powerful in opening up my intuition at vastly higher new levels. And with that work, I was also really playing with the energies of these aspects of the feminine that are also aspects of the earth, right? So they hold us all, like no matter who we are as humans, we're all held by these aspects of, the seasons, right? Spring, summer, autumn, winter, or thinking about as like the maiden, the mother, the wild woman, and the crone. So those energies were really present for me, and those started informing some of the powerful statements, some of the prayers. Like there's a card in here, a prayer to the crone, give me the wisdom of the crone, what needs to be done will be done. And that was like very much from that energy of working with these different aspects of the feminine that all give us different gifts and different challenges. Sometimes when you're in wild woman energy, just like, I can't be bothered and I just want to, run away. So I kind of set these challenges for myself. Like, what would it look like to channel the wild woman energy into creativity? Like, what could I borrow from the wild woman? And on her card, she's about returning to your desire. Like, yeah, it's true. You can't be bothered to fulfill obligations that don't really feel meaningful to you. So what if you return to your desire and you get to borrow that energy from her? And the archetypes come from like my study of philosophy, and I love, myths of the world and these images of different figures. And my challenge to myself was like, how do I reimagine them and empower them as figures? So for example, the figure of Cassandra, who is from a Greek myth, and this idea of somebody who could see the future, but nobody would believe her, and it's a curse is how it's portrayed. And I thought, what would it look like to reimagine that? And what if you knew truths and you spoke them, but it wasn't your job to convince people? And so she became this card that's about each heart opens in its own time. It is not your burden to make sure people understand what you're saying. So, those brought in the aspects of the work I was doing with clients, my spiritual work, my background in philosophy and, classical mythology. And I just opened to whatever would come through. So part of my morning practice became just doing my personal spiritual practices, and then channeling and allowing to come through. And I did the same thing when I went to the booklet, which was, okay, what's the message that wants to come through? There was a lot of lying down in Shavasana, in corpse pose. So I would have open, this is the card I'm going to be writing on next. And I would just lie down and I would ask, okay, and, name whatever the energy was. Okay, what message wants to come through? And then simply, in a stream of consciousness, type it. And obviously you helped me in the editing process to clarify, right? Because I was working from, okay, these are things that I've been thinking about for a long time that are clear to me that I know. And you helped me clarify, okay, but what does this mean? And what's the entry point for somebody who isn't in your brain, Megan? But it was all really just, I don't know who planted it in my heart, in my brain, but it was, I must do this. I will do this. And then it was so fast. It was so fast once we started the project, and everything just was a download. So that was the creative part of it.
And so you already kind of started answering my next question, but I would love to hear a little bit more about how our work together specifically helped you on this journey, like helped you accelerate or make things easier, and how that journey was like for you, or that experience.
Yeah, I feel like you were this gift from the cosmos, Anna, because I got this like, I'm going to make an Oracle deck. And then I got incredibly frustrated because I started looking for, how do I do this? How do I get this printed? How do I create this? And I hit dead end after dead end after dead end after dead end after dead end. And then somebody in my world introduced me to you, and I was like, yes, if I, in Mary Poppins, when the kids write the letter that brings them Mary Poppins, and it's like, they describe absolutely everything they want and they send it up the chimney. It was like that, so having the real world material physical support of like, okay, this is what we need to create, this is how we're going to get it printed, this is, you connected me with Nixie Foster, the amazing artist who did, I am so blown away by her artwork. I'll come across cards and just look at the imagery she created and go, she was feeling what was in my heart. She just knew, she had this, this deep otherworldly knowing. So there were all of those practical pieces that I had been hitting my head against a wall about. And suddenly there you were, and you're like, oh, well, here's our timeline. Here's what we need to do. We'll find an artist. We'll do that. And it was like, so for me, that was incredibly empowering because it was the container. I'm all about the dance between structure and flow. And what I feel is when we have the right structure in place, then we're free to flow, right? Then we feel safe. Our creativity emerges fully because we know I'm working on things in an order that makes sense, in a timeline that makes sense. I have a plan for, how this is getting out into the world. It can be really demoralizing sometimes to work on a project and not know how it's going to get out into the world. Not all the time, but you can kind of lose momentum if you go, well, how, I don't have a plan. Who's helping me bring this? Who's helping me birth this? So that was huge. And then in the creative aspects where you were, again, with part of that was structure. You're like, oh, okay, well, how long do you want the booklet to be? That will be this many words, and you broke it down, like that means we're going to spend this long in the introduction, and then you get, this many pages per card. And that was incredibly helpful, because then when I would go to channel, I would know when I was done, because in some ways there's always more to say, right? But it was, okay, this is the length I know I'm shooting for based on how I want the whole thing to work together. So that was huge. And then I was in my free form channeling. So when you came with editing and you said, okay, well, tell me more about this figure. I haven't heard of this person before. And that for me was a light bulb moment of, okay, not everybody's in my brain. In fact, I'm the only one in my brain. So your questions, and how do we help other people connect to this so it's just as powerful for them? That big picture editing all the way down to the small picture editing, where I sometimes just, as we all do, I think, get lost in the stream. And then you would come and say, this feels really powerful. And I bet there's like a simpler way to say it. And I would go, yes, there surely is. And having that, that time and that space, and knowing I got to hand things over to you. I had the most delicious feeling of playing hooky, where it was some cognitive dissonance in a good way. Actually, it really reshaped how I think about working on projects, because I have carried a story for a long time that to be meaningful, it needs to be hard. To be meaningful, it needs to be hard. And here I remember, it was the summer, all the booklet was already to Nixie. She was working on the art. You were working on edits. And I had this feeling of, I'm creating this Oracle deck and it's in motion and I'm doing nothing. I mean, like my work is done. And it radically shifted the paradigm that I was existing in. And it's like, as I'm speaking this, I'm getting a little bit of that. It's hard to describe in words, but the feeling I get when I'm having a huge transformation, like my body right now is weaving a bit and going, yeah, this is big. This was a portal that I stepped through. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think in a lot of ways, our journeys have been very similar. I really know that feeling, you kind of, when you're so used to everything having to be so hard. And I mean, that's how so many of us were trained to operate in this world. And like, you're just trained to work hard and basically be busy all the time in order to be productive. That's what you think you're doing. But I mean, my journey's been so much about simplifying things and getting rid of all the things that are not important so I can fully focus on what matters. And sometimes that just means, okay, right now it's time to take a break and let somebody else do the work for me. Or often for me, it's, I'm just handing it over to the universe and to my angels. And right now I don't know what to do, or I feel like I've done everything I can. So I'm just going to wait for the next pieces to come in. And it's become such a beautiful journey of, dancing with life and everything around me, or the people in my life as well.
Yeah.
And
I've had the experience before with the books I've published that there's a certain point where I can't make any changes right now, even if I wanted to, because the material's with the editor, right? So if I'm making changes, it's at cross purposes. And in the past, I'd always felt very anxious about that. Like, I can't be working on this more. And the feeling I had when I handed over all of the text to you to be edited and Nixie was working on the art was so much peace. Like, I couldn't be working on this right now, even if I wanted to, but I don't want to. I feel done. I feel complete. And I think that really speaks a lot to the process that you took me through and the groundwork that you laid, where you gave me a sense of what to expect. And you're like, this is, how the whole process will work. And these are like the check-in points. And so I felt really just clear and confident and complete. And to birth this deck with that energy was incredibly powerful. So I love when you get to bring something to life with the same energy that that thing has. Like, this is my gift to writers, and my gift to myself was to create it with this clean energy of changing the paradigm, and it not being about grinding, but it being about being in flow and channeling and being fully supported. And I do think that makes it extremely powerful, because it holds that frequency of allowing ease.
That's so powerful. And how would you say creating this deck has helped you transform your business? You've already shared quite a lot about how you've grown as a writer and also as a person. If you want to share more about that, I would love to hear more too. But I guess the most important thing I wanted to ask now is, like, how has it impacted your business? How, like, beyond just birthing this deck into the world?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's become
that process unfolding right now as well.
I mean, it's become an additional income stream in a very powerful way, because again, I'm shifting my paradigm around. It needs to be hard to be worthwhile. So, I'm playing with my cats, or I'm walking in the sunshine and I get that little ping from Shopify that somebody's purchased my deck. That is absolutely delightful. It's something that I'm currently working on building as a more significant, income stream for my business. And I have people reaching out saying, I feel like you're here with me, like whenever I pick a card. And my heart is lit up. And so it's also shifting, how I'm thinking about and strategizing and planning. And I want to be able to help more people and create more impact. And it's like, oh, I'm getting the very clear message that this is how, I've created it once. And now people asynchronously on different continents, anytime they want, get some Megan magic. So that's been huge. The income it's already bringing in, and then the way it's helping me think about how I want to restructure my business. It is a wonderful, it's expanding my comfort around speaking about divine creativity, receiving messages from source, all of these things that were 100% happening within my coaching sessions, but that I wasn't always speaking when I would talk about. Sometimes I frame myself as I help people write marketing content, which is true, but it's far from the complete truth, right? And all of a sudden, I've had this interesting experience where I would see dings coming through of people purchasing and know the person and go, that's somebody who doesn't really necessarily know about this spiritual side of me, and going, they do now. So I would say it's also been an incredible visibility allowance experience. Like, this is now one of the things you find, when you search Megan Barnhard and you find, like, okay, she's got this deck, and the very first card, it's not just the spiritual aspects, it's also the very first card is, I stoke my fires, I stroke my desires. And it's got this erotic energy to it. And that's a part of me that also, wasn't necessarily out there. So I would say there's this increase in visibility. I'm incorporating it into my sessions with clients. I'm actually, I did some live events for people who'd purchased the deck and was doing readings. And the people who came said, oh yeah, I'm using these with my clients. So I'm looking more into doing training people how they can use them in their work, doing more live readings. I love showing up and being live, or doing, sharing videos. And this is giving me more opportunity, more ideas, more ways of sharing. And I'm looking into a couple of different platforms to be on, specifically because I want to be doing readings. So it's expanding me, I think, into new creative ways of thinking about how I can show up and serve, and do something that really delights me. I think it also it's helping me own, and it's helping other people to recognize, this is my area of magic. I'm not simply a writing coach. I'm an intuitive writing coach. I'm here to help you connect more deeply with your wise writer within. So this feels like my calling card. I was invited to be on a streaming TV show recently, and it happened because I connected with a woman via networking, and we're kind of chatting, what do you do and how can I serve you? And I mentioned the deck and said a little bit about it. She said, "That sounds amazing. I want you on my TV show." Versus, okay, you're an intuitive coach and that sounds interesting. But as soon as I talked about the deck, it was like, okay, I know my audience needs to hear about that. So it's an opportunity to, put myself out there in bigger ways, because it's such a clear reason. It's such a clear thing to talk about, if that makes sense.
It does. And I mean, this is so, so powerful. Thank you for sharing all of that. And one thing that really stands out to me here is I remember something you said to me when we weren't even working together yet. I think it was on our first call, and when we just started connecting and we started talking about creating this deck together. You mentioned that there was this pattern that you wanted to break, that previously you had written books or published things, and almost as soon as you had published them, the work that you didn't resonate anymore. And you said to me that was an intention that you were setting, that you really wanted to break that pattern and commit to something long term. So I really love seeing that. I mean, it's obvious that this has changed in a big way for you. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that process, if you'd like to share. What do you think has made that difference for you, and what is different now in connection with this deck compared to other things that you published in the past that then just didn't feel aligned anymore as soon as they were done?
Yeah. I have to start by saying thank you so much for reminding me of that. I don't remember saying it, but it has come to pass. So I am celebrating. The very first obvious thing that's coming is that my previous books, and even when I've created courses, have come from a place of mind. Okay, what I need to create the thing that's going to help people solve this problem, and I need to give them all the information. Well, I'm always learning. I'm always learning more. So, I'll give you all of the information that I have about this today, and tomorrow there will be more, and I'll want to add and I'll want to revise. So as long as I was in that realm of information and what's coming from mind, I think that's when I was getting trapped in the dissatisfaction. Because, and I've done this, publish a book and immediately go back in and change the manuscript in the Kindle edition. Because I'm like, oh no, wait, there's more. And as long as it's about a process, how to do something, I want to give my best. Part of it too, I think, is related to a feeling of unworthiness. Like, it's not enough. I have to keep offering more, because I go back to my books, like how to outline and how to draft and how to tell your story. They're very helpful. And I get messages here and there from people that are being helped by them. The information isn't wrong, like out of date. It's not like how to draft has changed. It's my evolution has gone farther. So part of it is I go, well, now I know more, so I want to tell you more. And then part of it is, well, now I know more, so it's not fair if I don't go back and share that with you. And there's a kind of, I think, not helpful unworthiness feeling there about, oh, should I give you more? No, here's more. Versus opening up fully in surrender to show me, tell me what needs to come through for this. I'm not analyzing it. I'm not sitting here going, well, I'm the smartest person about this archetype, so I'm going to tell them everything. I am opening my heart and allowing myself to be a vessel for that greater wisdom coming through. That was a huge difference. I think another really big piece of this puzzle is where I am in my evolution as a writer and as a writing coach, and feeling fully free to include kind of, erotic ideas, or kind of, not kind of, spiritual ideas, and naming God, source, divine creativity, as forces that work around us and through us. And I give multiple names because I don't know the true nature of the universe. I'm in curiosity. I'm not in dogma. But I know there's more than me. I know, I know I'm being moved. And openly saying that, like, that's where my heart has been calling me for a long time. And now that I've stepped into it and own it, it's like, I feel like that's a huge part of the difference as well. Now I've created something, not because I thought it was the right next thing to do in my business, but because my soul called me to create it.
That is big. And
Yeah.
it definitely resonates. I guess if I could add another piece that just comes through for me, or what I kind of see from my perspective, I think creating a deck is such a big thing, and it really allows you to pour so many pieces of yourself into an intricately created piece of art. And I mean, it's everything. It's the writing and the art, and it opens up so many parts of you that, I mean, bring through wisdom that support you on your journey too.
Yeah.
And
there's actually another really big piece of the puzzle, sorry, that I've written about and I've shared with people, and it just didn't come through. I invested energetically, monetarily, and said, I am going to create the best thing that I can. This is a big part of it. The books I've created previously, I invested in having professional editing, but I made the covers myself. I tried to position them myself on online, and it didn't do a very good job, frankly, because I don't know about that. But I was in a place of, this is maybe something people relate to. Okay, if I don't do a really great job, if I don't put my best effort into it, then if it fails, I get to say, well, I didn't put my best effort into it. And I have had that as a safeguard for so many things in my life, right? So if my books don't do well, I made the covers myself, and I didn't have any help putting them up on Amazon, and I didn't, so how could I compete? What a great excuse, right? And for this deck, I said, I am going to do everything in my power to make this as good as it can be, which included finding the professional who knows how to do this process and all the moving pieces, finding an artist, paying for the high quality printing, like all of this stuff that was a big energetic and a big financial investment. I created the intention, I am going to make this the best I can. And I'm going to undo that paradigm, that story of, I won't really try, because then is this making sense? Like, that was a safeguard. And I felt, I'm done. I'm ready to bring something into the world that I stand behind fully. And I am so proud. I didn't create this artwork. I didn't, you got the cover going, Nixie did the artwork. Like, I don't feel, oh, I made this thing beautiful, but I feel I made a thing that is beautiful. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And it's because I said, this is going to be something I'm proud of, that is powerful, and that is the best I can possibly make it.
So there's actually a term in psychology, self-handicapping. I learned this in university. It's a
Oh,
very real thing. It is that protective mechanism that a lot of us use to, I mean, protect ourselves from failure, and then all of the things that come with that and what it means about us. And so it's a very real thing that we might try, like not try our best and kind of unconsciously, do things in certain ways so that we don't have to feel, like it's because it's about the effort that we're putting in and not about ourselves ultimately.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it doesn't mean anything
And
about me
now what's
just because I didn't do the work properly, if that makes sense.
yeah, but now the way I feel is I can't fail because it's real. So
Mm.
every time somebody sends me a message and says, I got your deck and wow, this is my experience with it, it's icing on the cake. But my success doesn't feel, whereas with the books, it did feel wrapped up in like, oh, people aren't buying and are they buying? And for me, the success is in it exists. And everything else is a bonus, which is such a wonderful, and it's a big bonus. I mean, I get teared up when people send me messages and, share with me how this is helping them. But all of that is in addition to like the deep soul satisfaction I have that nothing can take away because it exists and it exists like better than I could have imagined it.
Mm. And I
So
think
thank
that's
you. I'm
exactly
grateful for that.
what success is, right? I feel
Yeah.
like when you allow your soul to work through you, to speak through you, when you allow yourself to open up to something bigger and you allow spirit to work through you, you can't fail because you're really tapping into a greater creative power that just is guiding you and that is not limited by those paradigms and our limiting beliefs and our patterns that we might have used to sabotage our work and our journey otherwise.
I love that. It's the listening that's the success.
And the fulfillment comes with that naturally. And that's really what I think is such a big part of feeling successful. It's not about the achievements. We can even achieve big things and not feel successful because they're not fulfilling deep down. I've experienced that a lot in my journey. Like
Yeah.
I've worked so hard to reach this goal and now I should be happy and I should be celebrating, but I'm not because I feel like something's missing and I feel that spiritual piece is so important there. And that's really changed so much for me.
And there's this kind of delicious irony where because I feel that detachment, it's so much easier to tell people about it. Like I'm just, I'm in conversations with some local shops because I just was really excited, was like, here's my deck. Take a look at it. Let me know if you want to carry it. Like it's so easy to spread the word about it because I have that detachment, because it is the combination of a soul calling and making sure it was absolutely the best it could be by getting the support of pros who know what they're doing.
I really resonate with that too. That's what really happened when I got started on my journey with the Oracle decks and when I started offering this as a service. It was really, I was so stuck in a place where I just knew I needed to change something in my business. And for a long time, I was resisting it and I didn't really know what to do. I was just so stuck in my head about, certain ideas. And then all of a sudden that moment just came where I knew, okay, now is the time. I need to change something. And then the idea just came through. And I always felt that sense of detachment because I just felt like I was being guided by a higher power. And like, I don't have any other choice now. Like I really have to do this. And
Yeah,
and
it's easy once you surrender. You're like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing.
And it just exploded. Ever since then, I've pretty
Beautiful.
much been fully booked and it's just grown and it's been so easy and effortless in a lot of ways. Yeah, a lot more stories that I could share, but now I would really love to pull some cards from the deck. The one idea I already told you before we got started with the recording. So why don't we each pull one card for our audience and do a little joint reading?
Sure. Oh.
This is the one that
Father Sky.
Okay. But I'm gonna pull one. That's from a reading I did a little while ago.
Oh.
I really love the artwork. I mean, the goddesses that Nixie created, or
Yeah.
some
There's
gods.
so many layers and nuances. I find I come back and look at cards and I see different aspects. And when I'm doing readings, different parts of the imagery will pop out at me to talk about and add to. There's so many different layers with this. You can just look at the message, you can dive deep into the art, you can read the longer message in the booklet, you can do the writing prompt. Okay. So this is who's coming through on my end. Oh, okay. Number 45, Gatekeeper. You are chosen. I think my camera is just not really, there we go. I'm trying to make it not blurry. This is such a good one. So for anybody considering a project, this is for you. Throughout history, there have been literal gatekeepers, people who owned writing, printing presses, and the common person was not allowed to express themselves. And we live in a time now where we all have this access. And the gatekeeper's message is basically, she is you. So she ends by saying, there's only this one gatekeeper and it's you. It's just you giving yourself permission to say, it's my time to be heard. And you are chosen in the sense that you already likely know what message you want to share. And it's simply a matter of leaning into that and allowing that to carry you. So I love what a perfect one for our conversation about creativity.
Totally. I feel like it highlights what we just said as
Yeah.
well, about allowing spirit to just work through us. And you're already chosen. You just have to show up and be open to receiving and channeling that through.
Yeah.
Okay, let me look at my card. Oh, here she is again, the one I just showed you. Wise Athena.
Nice.
Make space for wisdom to enter. I mean, it's kind of exactly the same message. And when I look at the artwork, I don't know how easy it'll be to see it on the screen, but all the energy that's around her head. And it really reminds me of what can happen when we overthink things and things just get really complicated or overwhelming. But there is something coming through from a higher place, and all of a sudden it's all going to make sense. So you can just allow it to come through and not overthink it too much or try to analyze or understand. And if you just allow it to come through and just kind of flow naturally, I feel like it's just going to feel much more simple. It's going to make sense in a new way. And there's so much potential here. I'm seeing like some new ideas coming in, and creative energy and playfulness.
Yeah,
So
there's a feeling of electricity in that card too. And what I immediately think of is grounding. Like if it's like one of those kind of plasma things they have at science centers for kids. And when you touch the glass, it all comes there. And what we need when there's so much electricity and so many ideas is grounding. And that also makes the space for the ideas to enter from someplace else, because it calms down our own mind that's racing and trying to figure it all out. And so sometimes this is literally grounding, going outside, feeling the air on your face, taking a walk in nature, lying down on the floor. That's part of making space for ideas to enter, is breathing, slowing down, allowing.
that's so very true. I mean, for me, absolutely.
Yeah.
It works every single time. I mean, I need to spend so much time in nature, and I've created a life that allows me to do that now. And I pretty much live surrounded by nature. I can just go outside, and in 5 minutes, I don't even have to drive. I'm at the beach and I can just relax in the sun.
And you have the trees behind you
the
in your
trees,
beautiful
yeah, I
artwork.
think like the forest is pretty much the best for me. Like if I feel really scattered or I just really need to clear my mind, I just need to go into the forest, which is also not far from me.
Yeah.
I actually took that picture. That's probably about an
Gorgeous.
hour drive from here.
Gorgeous. Oh, well, what powerful support for people to know they're chosen, and to be the disruptors. There's something really delicious also in going, when I write from my heart, I am undoing centuries of people being silenced by, you know, whatever the powers were, that said, oh, if you write that, you'll stir up thoughts in people that aren't convenient for those of us in power. So, thinking about that and grounding while you do it can be so powerful.
That's such a big one too. I feel that's a theme I've seen, I mean, in history and also going back further, even like my own memories of even ancient Atlantis.
Mm.
I saw like those memories where, and I've heard other people talk about it too, where like we got implants like put into our throats and other parts of our bodies and our chakras, like energetic implants initially, but those were even, I mean, that's where it all started. We kind of
To
started
silence people, to
Mhm.
prevent. Yeah.
Yeah, to like from like specifically from sharing their wisdom and
Oh,
started getting to like a
yeah.
more emotional level.
Yeah.
I mean, people in power who wanted to have all the power for themselves and
Yeah.
not, um, or I mean, there are many
In a
layers.
in a scarcity mode. Yeah. Yeah. When people are in a place of thinking, if I don't grab it, somebody else will. As
Mm.
if the whole world is a game of hungry hippos. Did you have that game as a kid? It was like you're trying to grab all the marbles from the center, and it's just this kind of like frenetic game
It
like this.
sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. And if we're in a belief about the world that we're never enough and there isn't ever enough for us, then yeah, I mean, then power becomes so dangerous because it's like I have to silence everybody else versus, well, I'm following my soul's path and you're following your soul's path. Okay, cool. Let's respect that. And we can each do what we're doing.
Mm. I think this is so powerful in the world today. I think we really need that as part of our process, our collective journey too. I mean, there's so much wisdom within all of us, and there's so much power in that. I feel like so much healing power and so much potential to change the world in a big way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us creatives and coaches, healers, all of us who are here to make a big difference in the world, really being called to stop silencing ourselves ultimately, which can sometimes show up as other people trying to silence us, but ultimately we can't be silenced unless we allow that. So takes courage.
Yeah, I'm just feeling everything you're saying, Anna. And I think the more we allow our own truths to come through, the more content we feel. Obviously, then we can have impact, but there's also this micro impact where when I feel like I'm allowing myself to be free and self-expressed, I can be kinder and more compassionate with other people. And that is like you see that ripple effect. Like when one person smiles and then it, bounces across the room. Like when one of us is self-expressed and goes, oh, I'm allowing my truth to come through, that energy ripples out.
It's so beautiful. And I've seen it be so powerful in relationships too, like how it just opens up those new levels of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much more we could say about this. But before we end this call, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you're feeling called to share? Any last words?
Yeah. Whether or not you think you're a writer, you can be. You don't have to be. but I truly believe that writing is everyone's birthright. And so if this has been a place where you feel like a tenderness, maybe there's a wound there around writing, or a resistance, or but not me, I'm not chosen. You are chosen. You just saw that. And my hope is that this deck will be a way for you to build that relationship with the writer within you and grow it so you really feel in flow when you write and free to share what's in your heart, because only you can share that. Only you can share your powerful soul's message.
That's so beautiful and so true. Now, last question, where can we find you and where can we purchase the deck? I will also link everything down below, but
yeah. Well,
Megan
Barnhard, meganbarnhard.com, super easy. And that's where you can find me, all my info and the deck. And then I'm on Instagram as Write with Megan.
Thank you so much for being here with me today, Megan.
Thank you so much, Anna, for making us able to be here today. And for the invitation.
And for anybody who's interested in working with me, you can find me on wonderlandpublishing.net. I don't currently have a lot of space for done for you work because those spots just tend to fill up very quickly. But I do have my course on my website, and there are also some new offerings coming up. So stay tuned, and you can also sign up to my mailing list to receive all my updates. I'll link everything down below as well. So thank you so much. I can't wait to share this with our audience, and I can't wait to see the next steps on this beautiful journey with this beautiful deck for you and your work.
Thank you.